You know that wonderful feeling when you discover an amazing movie nobody's talking about? Like you've found buried treasure? Well, I've got 15 of them for you today, all from the 1960s. Here's the thing. Some movies become legends. Others, they simply vanish. The 1960s was producing incredible films left and right, but somehow these absolute gems got completely buried. So today, we're bringing them back into the light. I'm talking about 15 movies that broke every rule, changed the entire game, and still feel fresh today. If you think you've seen all the great films from the 60s, well, I have some wonderful surprises for you. Point Blank 1967 gave us what might be the coolest revenge film nobody talks about. A man gets double-crossed, abandoned to perish, right? But he comes back. And here's what's fascinating. He doesn't want justice. He doesn't want redemption. He just wants his money back. Lee Marvin barely speaks a word, but every movement radiates menace. He's not just hunting down the people who betrayed him. He's moving through this strange, dreamlike world where nothing feels solid. Is he alive? Gone? Is he some kind of unstoppable force of vengeance? The film never quite tells us. John Boorman took what could have been a basic crime story and transformed it into this hypnotic, mind-bending experience. And here's what's remarkable. Point Blank's influence is everywhere. From Drive to John Wick, they all owe a debt to this film. Yet somehow the original remains largely forgotten. That ice-cold style, that brutal efficiency, still powerful as ever. Failsafe, 1964. And I have to tell you, there's no humor here. No jokes. Just pure, bone-chilling terror. While Dr. Strangelove was finding dark comedy in nuclear war, Failsafe presented it as a waking nightmare that could happen tomorrow. Here's the setup. One technical glitch. That's all. One small mistake. And suddenly, American bombers are heading for Moscow with no way to call them back. Henry Fonda plays the president, and he's faced with impossible choices. Negotiate? Sacrifice something unthinkable? Or watch the world burn? Every second in this film increases the tension. Black and white cinematography, incredibly tight close-ups. You feel trapped in that bunker with them. No soundtrack to soften the blow. Just ticking clocks, panicked voices, and that sick feeling that we're all one mistake away from catastrophe. Why did this masterpiece get overlooked? It came out the same year as Dr. Strangelove, and Kubrick's dark comedy captured all the attention. But watch Failsafe now. It's more terrifying than ever, because this warning was never meant to be funny. The Swimmer 1968 brings us something unexpected. A middle-aged man decides he's going to swim home through all his neighbors' pools. Sounds like a pleasant summer adventure, doesn't it? But no, it's actually a devastating examination of the American dream. Burt Lancaster delivers perhaps his most vulnerable performance as Ned Merrill, this man with a bright smile who slowly falls apart as he moves from pool to pool. Lancaster channels all these fears about aging and becoming irrelevant directly into the role. It's remarkably intense. Frank Perry adapted John Cheever's haunting story into this surreal journey through suburbia that strips away the glossy surface of 1960s prosperity. Each pool, each awkward encounter with old friends reveals more cracks in Ned's story. His memories don't match reality. People react strangely to him. By the end, you realize this isn't about swimming at all. It's a complete psychological unraveling. The Swimmer remains one of the most honest portrayals of midlife crisis ever filmed. No easy answers. No redemption. Just one haunting question. What happens when the American dream becomes a nightmare you can't escape? Blow up. Imagine this. A photographer takes some casual pictures in the park. Nothing special, right? Wrong. When he develops them, he spots something that will haunt him forever. But here's the real question. Did he actually see it? Or is his mind playing tricks? This isn't your typical mystery film. It's like tumbling down a rabbit hole where nothing makes sense. We're in swinging London, all mod fashion and hip parties. But underneath, pure paranoia. Michelangelo Antonioni directed this masterpiece. The man grew up in Italy under Mussolini, witnessed those social divisions firsthand. It completely shaped how he would later film alienation and disconnection. So, our photographer keeps enlarging these photos, bigger and bigger, thinking he's getting closer to the truth. But really, he's just getting more lost. Reality starts fracturing like a broken mirror. Is there a conspiracy? Is he losing his mind? The film never tells us. What's remarkable is that filmmakers today still study this movie religiously. De Palma, Christopher Nolan, they all acknowledge their debt to blow up. The visual style, the atmosphere, that ending that defies logic, but somehow feels perfect. Pure genius. Once you reach that final scene, you'll understand. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Playtime 1967 and Jacques Tati presents us with this comedy masterpiece. We're in a sterile, modern Paris where people struggle desperately to connect in our mechanized world. Monsieur Hulot wanders through gleaming offices and restaurants, an analog soul lost in a digital maze. But here's what's brilliant. It's not simply technology is bad comedy. It's actually celebrating human resilience and creativity. Tati literally spent his entire fortune on this film, built massive modernist sets that bankrupted him, but allowed him to control every tiny detail. The man was obsessed with perfection. The genius lies in finding humor in the smallest human moments. Reflections in glass doors, people navigating revolving doors, the chaos that erupts when a fancy restaurant's perfect control system breaks down. There's almost no dialogue, yet every frame contains perfectly choreographed visual jokes. You need to watch it multiple times to catch everything. Playtime demonstrates that even in the most soulless environments, people find ways to laugh and connect. Comedy doesn't have to be cruel or loud. Sometimes it just needs to be beautifully, precisely human. Persona, 1966. An actress stops speaking. A nurse can't stop talking. Two women alone on an island begin merging in ways that will completely challenge your understanding of what cinema can be. Ingmar Bergman created this during a personal crisis. He was ill, questioning everything about himself as both artist and person. He poured all that psychological fragmentation into these two women whose identities blur and blend. Liv Ullmann and Bibi Andersson deliver extraordinary performances as these women locked in a strange dance of dominance and submission, reality and performance. The film opens with shots of film equipment, reminding us we're watching a movie, but then becomes so intensely intimate that we forget everything except these faces, these souls colliding. This film influenced everyone, from David Lynch to Charlie Kaufman. Some films tell stories. This one burrows into your subconscious. Every viewing reveals new layers, asking fundamental questions about identity, performance, and the nature of reality itself. The Servant, 1963. A wealthy man hires a butler. Simple enough, yes? But wait, pretty soon you can't tell who's actually in charge. The Servant isn't just about authority. It's about watching power slip away, drop by subtle drop. We have Tony, James Fox, your typical upper-class English gentleman, and Barrett, Dirk Bogarde, his new manservant. It starts properly professional. But Barrett? He's not just serving tea, he's playing a very long game. Joseph Lucy directed with Harold Pinner's razor-sharp script. Every glance, every pause, every shadow suggests something's wrong. Barrett advances bit by bit, making the house his domain. Then his sister arrives, spoiler, not his sister, and the psychological warfare intensifies. The cinematography? Absolutely claustrophobic. You feel trapped alongside Tony. Even today, watching people manipulate and control each other this way hits just as hard. By the end, you understand the truth. Power doesn't explode. It seeps in, one small victory at a time. Seconds, 1966. A bored banker pays a mysterious company to fake his passing, give him a new face, new identity, completely new life. But can you really escape yourself? John Frankenheimer's paranoid thriller feels like science fiction. But the identity crisis and midlife desperation? Painfully real. Rock Hudson delivers the performance of his career as a man trapped in someone else's face, desperately trying to become someone he's not. Cinematographer James Wong Howe makes everything look distorted. Strange reflections, tilted angles, nothing feels stable. This fits perfectly with Frankenheimer's Paranoia trilogy, alongside The Manchurian Candidate and 7 Days in May. But Seconds isn't chasing thrills. It's existential horror, about a man who gets everything he thought he wanted and realizes it's all empty. That ending hits like a hammer. Some prisons are inside us, no matter how much we change on the outside. Target's 1968. A horror legend meets a real monster. Two stories racing toward each other. One's make-believe, one's terrifyingly real. This film resonates very differently now than it did then. Boris Karloff plays an aging horror actor who feels obsolete. At 81, Karloff was suffering from chronic back pain from an old injury, sustained while carrying Colin Clive during Frankenstein. The role that made him famous was literally causing him daily pain. By the end of his career, he felt irrelevant, believed movie monsters meant nothing when real horror filled the nightly news. The old actor thinks monsters used to live on screen. Now, they walk among us. Meanwhile, a clean-cut young man loads up on weapons and ammunition. No manifesto. No dramatic speech. Just cold, calculated violence. Peter Bogdanovich's directorial debut pulls no punches. Fiction and reality blur until you can't distinguish which is more frightening. The ending forces us to confront an awful truth. When reality becomes more violent than any movie, where do we find escape? Targets was asking questions in 1968 that we're still grappling with today. Some horror refuses to stay on screen. A Child is Waiting, 1963. A school filled with children who simply want someone to understand them. A teacher trying to help. A system resistant to change. Judy Garland and Burt Lancaster star in this film that courageously examined special needs, education, when most looked away. Garland brings this deep understanding of vulnerability to the role. She really understood what it meant to need compassion. Garland plays a passionate but inexperienced teacher drawn to children everyone else ignores. Lancaster runs the school with firm discipline. Director John Cassavetes avoids sentimentality. He shoots in documentary style, casting real children with developmental disabilities. The camera doesn't look away from their struggles, their joy, their need for connection, things Hollywood typically avoided. The film asks difficult questions. Should these children be treated differently or equally? What matters more, compassion or discipline? And who truly decides what's best? A Child is Waiting was far ahead of its time, addressing issues we're still working through today. It's quiet but powerful, the kind of film that stays with you and challenges what you really believe. Latru, 1960, a prison cell, a hole in the floor. a plan that cannot fail. This isn't Hollywood spectacle. Latru is stripped down, methodical, and feels incredibly authentic. 5 men planning a prison break. Every single detail matters. Director Jacques Becker pursued absolute authenticity, even casting Jean Carodi, one of the actual escapees, to play himself. No dramatic music, no over-the-top action. Just men working in complete secrecy, knowing one mistake means solitary confinement or worse. The camera lingers on tiny details, sawdust falling through floorboards, handmade tools scraping against metal. You feel every second of their work. The tension builds relentlessly until you can barely breathe. When the escape finally begins, you're right there with them. But here's what's profound. This isn't some triumphant freedom story. The film asks a darker question. Even if you break out, are you ever truly free? Latru reveals that some prisons don't have walls. The Bedford Incident, 1965. The Cold War thriller where everything actually goes wrong. One mistake, one moment of pushing too hard, and suddenly, we're facing nuclear disaster. This might be the most overlooked Cold War thriller ever made. Richard Widmark plays an obsessed Navy captain hunting a Soviet submarine, pushing his crew beyond their limits. But this isn't an action film. It's paranoia at sea, where fear of the enemy becomes more dangerous than the enemy himself. Every order, every escalation, brings them closer to disaster. Then the unthinkable actually happens. Unlike other Cold War films, there's no comfort here. No heroes, no easy answers, just a mirror, reflecting how one misunderstanding could end everything. Decades later, still terrifyingly relevant. Blast of Silence, 1961. Snow falls on New York City. Christmas lights twinkle everywhere. But for one man, it's just another job to complete. Blast of Silence pulls you directly into a hitman's mind. And trust me, it's not a pleasant place to visit. That voiceover hits immediately. You were born in pain. Suddenly, you're not just watching. You're inside Frankie Bono's troubled mind as he stalks his target. The entire narration is in second person, making you his unwilling accomplice. You feel his isolation, his inevitable doom. When Frankie begins questioning his path, you're trapped there with him. Alan Barron directed and starred in this remarkable film. New York becomes a cold, unforgiving labyrinth. Dark alleys, neon reflecting off wet pavement, jazz that sounds like anxiety itself. It's absolutely bleak. Yes, later films like Taxi Driver and Drive followed this template, but Blast of Silence created it. What astounds me is how few people have seen this film. How does something this intense, this influential, simply disappear? Watch it once, and you'll never forget it. The Face of Another, 1966. What if you could change your face like changing clothes? Start fresh, become someone entirely new? A man with a disfigured face receives a perfect mask from an enigmatic surgeon. But it's not just synthetic material. It's a complete new identity. The problem is, once he wears it, something shifts. Is he controlling the mask, or is the mask controlling him? This isn't traditional horror, but the existential dread is suffocating. Director Hiroshi Teshigahara creates a deeply unsettling dreamscape. Stark white rooms, distorted reflections, faces that seem familiar, yet alien. The camera focuses on tiny details that shouldn't be frightening, but absolutely are. Our protagonist drifts further from himself with each scene. The film keeps posing uncomfortable questions. Are we merely the face others see? Give someone a new face? Do they remain the same person? Or do they become a stranger, even to themselves? The atmosphere is haunting, the themes profoundly disturbing. The Face of Another burns slowly, but leaves lasting marks. Long after viewing, you'll hear that whisper. Are we more than just the masks we wear? Patulia, 1968. An eccentric free spirit meets a recently divorced doctor in San Francisco. What begins like a romantic comedy transforms into something far darker and more complex. Richard Lester, fresh from directing the Beatles films, turns his kaleidoscopic style toward examining the fractures in the American dream. Julie Christie sparkles as Patulia, but beneath that manic pixie exterior lies genuine pain and desperation. George C. Scott plays the doctor obsessed with saving her, not understanding that some people cannot be saved. Shot during San Francisco's Summer of Love, the film captures a city torn between old conformity and new freedom, but showing that freedom always has a price. Lester's fragmented editing, jumping between past, present, and future, mirrors everyone's emotional chaos and the decades' sense of disconnection. What makes Patulia special is its refusal to romanticize either the free spirit or the conservative world she's fleeing. Instead, it presents a nuanced portrait of people trying to connect in an increasingly fractured world. Sometimes there are no easy answers, just human choices and their consequences. These 15 films prove the 1960s was an era of remarkable creative risk-taking, when filmmakers worldwide pushed every boundary and discovered new ways to tell stories. Each film reveals not just artistic vision, but how cinema can be dangerous, beautiful, and transformative. These forgotten gems deserve rediscovery, not as museum pieces, but as living art that continues to speak to us today. The 1960s taught us that cinema could change everything. These films remind us why. Well, if you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who appreciates great cinema. Please hit that subscribe button if you'd like more deep dives into forgotten film treasures. I'm always searching for these hidden gems, and believe me, we're just getting started. Ring the notification bell too, because you won't want to miss the next collection of films that deserve your attention. And please, leave a comment below. Which of these films are you most excited to watch? I'd love to hear from you.